My name is Noelle. I'm 32 years old. Right now, I'm standing outside a Manhattan hotel ballroom holding my 4-year-old twin's hands. In my purse is an invitation from my ex husband, the CEO who threw me away. His note said, "Come see how far I've risen without you dragging me down." He has no idea what's coming. Before I walk through those doors, tell me where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. Let me take you back to where this all began. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knows your name and your business. My family was solidly middle class. My dad was an electrician, worked with his hands every single day, came home smelling like copper wire and hard work. My mom, Diana, was a nurse at the local hospital, pulling double shifts more often than not. We never had much, but we had enough. We had love. Then when I was 16, everything changed. Dad was working on a construction site downtown when there was an accident. Faulty wiring. An explosion. They said he died instantly, that he didn't suffer. I don't know if that was true, or if they just said it to make us feel better. Either way, he was gone. Just like that. One morning he kissed my forehead and told me to have a good day at school, and by that evening I was helping my mom pick out a casket. After that, Mom raised me and my younger brother Kyle on her own. She worked herself to the bone, never complained, never asked for help. I learned everything I know about strength from watching her. I learned that you don't wait for someone to save you. You save yourself. I studied hard, harder than anyone in my class. I was determined to make something of myself, to give my mom a better life, to honor my dad's memory. When I got a full scholarship to a business school in New York City, I packed my bags and never looked back. Well, I looked back a little. I called Mom every Sunday, sent money home whenever I could. I graduated near the top of my class and landed a job at a mid-sized marketing firm in Manhattan. I was 24 years old, hungry, ambitious, ready to take on the world. I rented a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, the kind where you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out. I ate ramen noodles 4 nights a week and considered it a luxury when I could afford takeout on Fridays. Life was hard, but it was mine. I was building something. Then I met Brandon Sterling. Our firm had just landed a huge contract with Sterling Industries, one of the biggest tech conglomerates on the East Coast. My boss assigned me to lead the presentation to their executive team. I was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. This was my chance to prove myself. The day of the presentation, I walked into that glass tower conference room with my laptop tucked under my arm and my heart pounding in my chest. And there he was, Brandon Sterling, 29 years old, recently appointed CEO, heir to the Sterling Empire. He was tall, dark-haired, with sharp cheekbones and eyes so blue they almost didn't look real. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When I started my presentation, he leaned back in his chair with this look on his face, like he was amused, like he was waiting for me to mess up. So I didn't mess up. I nailed every single slide, answered every question with confidence, and by the end, even the skeptics in the room were nodding along. After the meeting, Brandon approached me. So he said, "You're pretty impressive for someone from a small firm." I smiled politely. "Thank you. I take my work seriously." He tilted his head, studying me like I was some kind of puzzle he wanted to solve. "Let me take you to dinner, to celebrate the partnership." I declined. Mixing business with pleasure wasn't my style. Plus, I could tell he was the kind of man who always got what he wanted, and something about that bothered me. I didn't want to be another conquest, but Brandon Sterling wasn't used to hearing the word no. Over the next few weeks, flowers arrived at my office every single day. Roses, lilies, orchids, arrangements so elaborate, my coworkers started making jokes about my secret admirer. He texted me good morning every day, sent me articles he thought I'd find interesting, remembered little details I mentioned in passing. He was persistent, charming, relentless. Eventually I caved. One dinner, I told myself. What's the harm that one dinner turned into 2, then 3, then a standing date every Friday night? Brandon took me to restaurants I'd only ever seen in magazines, introduced me to a world of luxury I never knew existed. Private jets, weekend trips to the Hamptons, designer clothes that showed up at my apartment with handwritten notes. But what I loved most were the quiet moments. The nights we stayed in and cooked pasta together in his penthouse kitchen. The way he'd listen to my stories about growing up in Ohio, actually listen like my life mattered to him, even though it was so different from his own. He told me I was different from the other women he'd dated, that I was real, genuine, that I made him want to be a better man. I believed him. After a year of dating, he proposed. We were on the rooftop of his building, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind us, and he got down on one knee with a diamond ring that could have paid off my student loans 3 times over. "Noelle," he said, "I've spent my whole life chasing success. But you're the first thing that's ever felt like home. Will you marry me?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. I was in love. I was happy. I thought I'd found my person. Our wedding was everything I never knew I wanted. 300 guests at a 5-star hotel. A dress that made me feel like a princess. My mom crying happy tears in the front row. Brandon's father, Raymond, gave a toast about the sterling legacy, and if his smile didn't quite reach his eyes when he looked at me, I told myself I was imagining things. We moved into Brandon's penthouse and I quit my job at his request. He said he could provide for both of us, that I didn't need to work myself to exhaustion anymore. At first I saw it as romantic. He wanted to take care of me. Later I would understand it differently. The first 6 months of marriage felt like a dream. We traveled. We laughed. We made plans for the future. Brandon talked about having children someday, about building a family together. But slowly, so slowly, I almost didn't notice at first, things began to change. Brandon started working later. Dinners alone became the norm rather than the exception. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd kiss my forehead and tell me not to worry, that he was just busy with a big deal. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Without my job, I found myself adrift. I tried to fill my days with lunches and charity events with the other wives in Brandon's social circle, but I never quite fit in. They all came from money, from generations of privilege. They had summer houses in the Vineyard and winter homes in Aspen. They talked about boarding schools and trust funds and designers I'd never heard of. And they whispered about me when they thought I couldn't hear. "Did you know her father was an electrician? I heard she grew up in Ohio. Like rural Ohio. Brandon could have had anyone. I don't understand what he sees in her." I pretended not to notice. I smiled and nodded and played the part of the perfect CEO's wife. But inside, I felt smaller and smaller every day. Brandon's father, Raymond, made no effort to hide his disdain. At family dinners, he would make pointed comments about my background. "So, Noelle," he said once, passing me the bread basket with a condescending smile, "I understand your father worked in construction. Manual labor, is that right?" "He was an electrician," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "He was very good at his job." Raymond hummed noncommittally. "Well, it's nice that Brandon's broadening the family's horizons. Diversity is important these days, isn't it?" Brandon didn't say a word in my defense. He just kept eating, his eyes fixed on his plate. That night I brought it up. "Your father was rude to me," I said. Again. Brandon sighed. "That's just how he is, Noelle. He doesn't mean anything by it. He implied that I'm beneath your family." Brandon turned away, loosening his tie. "You're being oversensitive. Dad comes from a different generation. Just try to get along with him, okay?" For me, I swallowed my hurt and nodded. For him. Always for him. Then came the night that cracked everything wide open. It was a month after our first anniversary. I'd been feeling tired lately, nauseous in the mornings. On a whim, I bought a pregnancy test at the drugstore. When those 2 pink lines appeared, I burst into tears of joy. A baby. We were going to have a baby. I spent the whole day planning how to tell Brandon. I cooked his favorite meal, set the table with candles, even bought a tiny pair of baby booties to put on his plate as a surprise. But Brandon came home late. Very late. After midnight. And when he walked through the door, I noticed something on his collar. A smear of red. Lipstick. A shade I didn't own. My stomach dropped. "Brandon," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is that?" He looked down, saw the mark, and his expression flickered. Just for a second, something passed across his face. Guilt. Annoyance. I couldn't tell. "It's nothing," he said already, unbuttoning his shirt. "I had a late meeting. Janet from accounting spilled her wine on me when she was saying goodbye." "Janet from accounting," I repeated. "Yes." He walked past me without meeting my eyes. "I'm exhausted. Let's talk tomorrow." I didn't tell him about the pregnancy that night. I sat at the table alone, staring at those tiny booties, my heart cracking into pieces. Over the next few weeks, I tried to convince myself I was wrong. Brandon was stressed with work. The lipstick was an innocent accident. I was pregnant and hormonal, making mountains out of molehills. But the signs kept piling up. Late nights. Hushed phone calls he'd take in another room. The way he'd angle his phone away from me when he was texting. A receipt I found in his jacket pocket for a necklace I'd never received. I still didn't tell him about the baby. I was waiting for, I don't know what I was waiting for. Some sign that things would be okay. That we could fix this. I was 12 weeks pregnant when I finally learned the truth. The doctor had called that morning with exciting news. An ultrasound had revealed something unexpected. "Mrs. Sterling, she said you're carrying twins. Congratulations." Twins. 2 babies. I hung up the phone with trembling hands, overwhelmed with emotion. This changed everything. I had to tell Brandon. Whatever was happening between us, whatever problems we had, we could work through them. We were going to be parents. We were going to be a family. I decided to surprise him at work. I put on a nice dress, dabbed on some makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes, and took a cab to Sterling Industries headquarters. The receptionist smiled at me. "Mrs. Sterling, what a pleasant surprise. Mr. Sterling is in his office. Should I let him know you're here?" "No," I said, smiling back. "I want to surprise him." I took the elevator to the executive floor, my heart racing with anticipation. I was going to walk in there, show him the ultrasound picture, and watch his face light up with joy. We would hug and cry, and everything would be okay. When I reached his office, the door was slightly ajar. I could hear voices inside. Laughter. I pushed the door open, and there they were. Brandon was on the leather sofa, his tie loosened, his shirt half unbuttoned, and straddling his lap, her arms wrapped around his neck, was a woman I recognized. Clarissa Whitmore. 25 years old, blonde gorgeous. Her father owned Whitmore Capital, one of the biggest investment firms on Wall Street. They were kissing, deeply, intimately, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. For a moment I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. I just stood there in the doorway watching my entire world collapse. Then Clarissa noticed me. She pulled back from Brandon, eyes wide, lipstick smeared. Brandon turned around, saw me standing there, and his face went white. "Noelle," he said, scrambling to his feet. "This isn't what it looks like." I almost laughed. "Isn't that what they always say?" "Really," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Because it looks exactly like what I think it is." Clarissa smoothed down her skirt, utterly unashamed. "Brandon, darling, you didn't tell me your wife would be visiting." Brandon shot her a look, then turned back to me. "Noelle, let's talk about this at home." "No." I took a step back. "We're done talking." I turned and walked away. Behind me I heard Brandon calling my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I would fall apart, and I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not here. Not in front of them. I made it to the elevator, pressed the button, stepped inside. The doors closed. And then I finally let myself cry. When I got home to the penthouse, I started packing. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Not anymore. Not after what I'd seen. Brandon arrived an hour later. "Noelle, please," he said, standing in the bedroom doorway, watching me stuff clothes into a suitcase. "Let me explain. Explain what I didn't look at him. That you've been cheating on me, I think I understood that part pretty clearly. It's complicated." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Clarissa's father is crucial to a merger we're working on. He made it clear that he wouldn't negotiate unless there was a relationship. I finally looked up at him. Are you telling me you're sleeping with her for business? You don't understand how this world works, he said. I laughed bitterly. Maybe I don't. But I understand basic human decency. I understand wedding vows. I understand that when you promise to love someone, you don't betray them for a merger. Brandon's jaw tightened. You're being naive. And you're being a coward. We stared at each other across the room, and I saw him clearly for the first time. Not the charming man who'd swept me off my feet, but a stranger. A liar. A man who would sell anyone to get what he wanted. I took a deep breath. I'm pregnant, I said. With twins. For a moment he just looked at me. Then his expression shifted into something cold. Something ugly. Are you sure they're mine? The question hit me like a physical blow. I actually stumbled backward. What, you heard me? He crossed his arms. How do I know you haven't been entertaining yourself while I've been working? I had never in my entire life felt so much hatred for another person. Never once, I said through gritted teeth. I have never been with anyone except you. Brandon shrugged. My father warned me this would happen. He said you'd try to trap me with a pregnancy when things went south. Your father. Of course. I zipped up my suitcase, hands shaking with rage. You know what, Brandon? I don't care what you believe. I know the truth. And I'm done trying to prove myself to you or your family. I headed for the door, but he blocked my way. Where do you think you're going, home? To Ohio. To my mother. Somewhere I'm actually wanted. His lip curled. Fine. Run home to Mommy. But don't think you're taking anything that belongs to me. The only thing that belongs to you, I said, looking him dead in the eye, is your own misery. And I'm leaving that right here. I walked out of that penthouse and didn't look back. The next few days were a blur. I stayed at a cheap motel while I figured out my next move. Brandon's lawyer sent over divorce papers with a note from Raymond. Sign these and accept $200,000, and this whole unfortunate situation can be behind us. Refuse, and we'll make sure you leave with nothing. Our legal team will bury you. Choose wisely. They also included a clause demanding I relinquish all claims on behalf of any children, because they still didn't believe the twins were Brandon's. I called my own lawyer, a woman named Patricia, I'd found through a legal aid service. She reviewed the documents and shook her head. They're trying to intimidate you, she said. But if you can prove paternity, those children have rights. I could prove it. A simple DNA test would prove it. But as I sat there in that tiny motel room, my hand on my belly, I made a different decision. I didn't want their money. I didn't want their name. I didn't want my children growing up in that toxic world fighting for scraps of approval from people who would never see them as anything but mistakes. I would raise these babies on my own. I would give them everything they needed. And Brandon Sterling would never know what he'd lost. I signed the papers. I rejected the money. And I went home to Ohio. My mother welcomed me with open arms and no judgment. She set up my old bedroom, made my favorite chicken soup, and held me while I cried. You did the right thing, she said, stroking my hair. You got out. Now we're going to focus on these babies and building you a new life. The pregnancy was hard. Carrying twins is exhausting under the best circumstances, and I was doing it while emotionally shattered. Around month 7, I developed complications and was put on bed rest. Mom took care of everything, meals appointments, keeping my spirits up when I felt like giving up. On a cold January morning at 36 weeks, I went into labor. 22 hours later, I was holding my babies in my arms. Mia came first, screaming her little lungs out, furious at the world for disturbing her. Ethan followed 3 minutes later, quieter, more observant, blinking up at me with curious eyes. They both had Brandon's eyes, that same striking blue that I once found so beautiful. Looking at them, I felt a complicated rush of emotions. Love fierce and overwhelming, grief for the family we'd never be, and determination. So much determination. These children would never doubt their worth. They would never feel like they weren't enough. I would make sure of it. I named them Mia Elizabeth, after my grandmother, and Ethan James, after my father. No Sterling anywhere in their names. They were mine. When the twins were 6 months old, I knew I needed to start working again. My savings were running out, and I couldn't rely on my mother forever. I started doing freelance marketing work from home, squeezing in calls and emails during nap times, staying up late after the babies went to sleep. It was exhausting. It was overwhelming. Some nights I cried from pure fatigue. But I kept going because what choice did I have? One day, while researching a client's product line, I stumbled onto something that caught my attention. A gap in the market for organic skincare products specifically designed for pregnant women and new mothers. Safe ingredients. No harsh chemicals. Nothing that would make you worry about what you were putting on your skin while growing a human being. I thought about my own pregnancy, how hard it had been to find products I trusted. I thought about all the other mothers out there with the same concern. An idea began to form. I started researching obsessively. Ingredients, formulations, market trends, competitors. I filled notebooks with plans and projections. I knew I was onto something, I could feel it, but I had no idea how to actually create the products. That's when I met Harper. We crossed paths at a farmer's market of all places. She was selling handmade soaps from a little booth, and I was drawn in by the beautiful packaging. We got to talking, and I learned she was a chemist by training a single mom like me, trying to make ends meet while pursuing her passion for natural skincare. I told her about my idea. She told me about her formulations. By the end of the conversation, we were planning our first product line together. Bloom Naturals was born in my mother's garage. We started with 3 products: a belly butter for stretch marks, a gentle face moisturizer, and a soothing body oil. Harper handled the science, making sure every ingredient was safe and effective. I handled the business side, building a website, creating a brand identity, figuring out how to reach customers. Our first month, we sold 23 units. I remember thinking that was incredible. 23 strangers trusted us enough to try our products. We reinvested every penny of profit back into the business. Better packaging, more products, paid advertising. We worked 16-hour days, Harper formulating in her kitchen, while I answered customer emails at 3 in the morning with a baby on each hip. The second year, we got our first big break. A mommy blogger with a huge following tried our products and loved them. She posted a rave review, and suddenly our website crashed from traffic. We sold out of inventory in 48 hours. We scrambled to scale up, found a small manufacturer who shared our values, hired our first employee, then our second, moved out of the garage and into a real office space. By year 3, Bloom Naturals was being sold in organic grocery stores across the Midwest. By year 4, we'd expanded nationally. A major retailer approached us about carrying our products. When we finalized that deal, I sat in my office, the same office I'd been too scared to dream about just a few years earlier, and I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from disbelief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization of how far I'd come. Mia and Ethan were 4 years old now, bright, curious, beautiful children who called my mother Grandma and Harper Auntie. They went to a lovely preschool, had friends, played in the backyard of the house I'd bought with money I earned myself. I had built this, all of it, without Brandon, without the Sterling name, without anyone's permission or approval, and I had never felt more powerful in my entire life. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant brought in the mail. Most of it was the usual stuff: industry magazines, vendor catalogs, a few handwritten notes from satisfied customers that always made my day. But there was one envelope that stood out. Heavy cream cardstock embossed with a familiar logo. Sterling Industries. My heart stuttered. I opened it with careful fingers. Inside was an invitation to the Sterling Industries 15th Anniversary Gala, black tie event. Manhattan's most prestigious hotel. All the biggest names in business and media. Tucked behind the invitation was a smaller card with handwritten words I recognized. Come see how far I've risen without you dragging me down. Consider this my final gift to you, a front row seat to my success. I read it 3 times, waiting for the words to make sense. Was this real? After 5 years of silence, Brandon Sterling was inviting me to watch him gloat. I walked into Harper's office and handed her the invitation. She read it, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally cold fury. Is he serious right now? She looked up at me. He actually thinks after everything that you're going to show up and feel what jealous inferior? I leaned against her desk. I think that's exactly what he expects. Well, he's in for a surprise. Harper tossed the invitation down. You're not going right. I was quiet for a moment. Harper's eyes widened. Noelle, tell me you're not actually considering this. I picked up the invitation, turning it over in my hands. He doesn't know about the twins. He doesn't know about any of it. As far as he's concerned, I'm still that broken woman who crawled back to Ohio with nothing. So let him keep thinking that. Why give him the satisfaction? I looked at her. Because maybe it's time he faced the truth. All of it. Harper studied me for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across her face. You want to show up and destroy him. I want closure, I said. And maybe, yes, a little bit of destruction. We spent the next few days planning. I researched everything I could about Brandon's current situation. He'd married Clarissa Whitmore 2 years after our divorce, big wedding, lots of press coverage. From what I could tell, the marriage wasn't going well. There were blind items in gossip columns about screaming matches at restaurants, about Clarissa's shopping addiction, about Brandon being spotted at bars alone. Sterling Industries was still successful, but facing increased competition. Raymond Sterling had stepped back from day-to-day operations due to health issues, which meant Brandon was under more pressure than ever to prove himself. This gala was important. It was a chance for Brandon to showcase the company court investors, cement his reputation as a serious leader. And I was going to walk in there and blow it all up. I decided to bring Mia and Ethan. Harper thought I was crazy. My mother was worried. But I knew it was the right call. Brandon had denied these children had accused me of lying about their paternity. He'd never once tried to find out the truth, never reached out, never cared. Now he would meet them. He would look into their eyes, his eyes, and he would know. I bought a new dress, something elegant and powerful. Black silk, simple lines, the kind of outfit that said, I don't need to try hard to outshine everyone in this room. For the kids, I found adorable formal outfits, a little suit for Ethan, and a navy dress for Mia. The night before the gala, I sat down with them. Tomorrow we're going to a big party, I explained. There will be a lot of grown-ups there. Some of them might be surprised to see us. But I need you to be brave for Mommy, okay? Mia tilted her head. Why would they be surprised? Because I said, choosing my words carefully, they thought they knew me. But they're about to find out they were wrong. The Sterling Industries Gala was everything I remembered about Brandon's world and more. Crystal chandeliers dripping from vaulted ceilings, men in tuxedos, and women in designer gowns. Champagne flowing. The low hum of power and money circulating through the room. I stood at the entrance of the ballroom, one hand holding Mia's small fingers, the other holding Ethan's. My heart was pounding, but my spine was steel. A woman near the door looked at us curiously. I didn't recognize her, but she clearly recognized something about me, or maybe about my children, because her eyes went wide. I walked forward. The crowd parted around us like water around a stone. I could hear the whispers starting. Who is that? Are those children? Wait, isn't that? Oh my God. I spotted Brandon immediately. He was near the stage, surrounded by investors and executives, looking every inch the successful CEO in his perfectly tailored suit. Clarissa stood beside him in a red dress, her hand possessively on his arm. When Brandon saw me, his smile froze. I walked toward him, steady, unhurried. The crowd seemed to sense that something was happening. Conversations died down. Heads turned. Brandon stepped forward, trying to intercept me before I got too close to his important guests. Noelle. His voice was controlled, but I could see the panic in his eyes. You actually came. And who are these? I smiled serenely. Brandon, I said. It's been a while. I looked down at my children, my beautiful, innocent children who deserved so much better than this moment, but who also deserved the truth. Say hello, kids. Hello, sir, they chorused politely. Brandon stared at them, at Mia's heart-shaped face, at Ethan's serious expression, at the blue eyes, his blue eyes looking back at him from two small faces. The color drained from his skin. Clarissa pushed forward. Brandon, who is this woman, and whose children are these? I met her gaze calmly. These are my children, Mia and Ethan. They're 4 years old. I watched her do the math. Watch her expression shift from confusion to realization to horror. 4 years old, she turned to Brandon. That would mean while you were still married to... Brandon held up his hands. This isn't, I didn't know he never, what I asked pleasantly, never cared enough to find out a commotion behind us. Raymond Sterling was pushing through the crowd, his face purple with rage. What is she doing here? He jabbed a finger at me. Security, remove this woman immediately. I didn't flinch. Hello, Raymond. How nice to see you again. I'd like you to meet your grandchildren. The word landed like a bomb. Grandchildren. The whispers exploded into open conversation. I saw phones being raised, cameras flashing. A reporter I recognized from a financial news network was speaking urgently into her phone. Raymond sputtered. Those are not Brandon. Tell them this is nonsense. Brandon couldn't speak. He was staring at the twins, at his children, with an expression I'd never seen before. Shock. Recognition. Something that might have been grief. I stepped forward, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. 5 years ago, I told my husband I was pregnant with twins. Do you know what he said to me? He asked if they were really his. And when I told him yes, he threw me out. I looked around at the assembled guests, the investors, the executives, the journalists. I left with nothing. I went home to Ohio. I built a business from scratch. Some of you might have heard of it. Bloom Naturals. Recognition rippled through the crowd. I saw a few appreciative nods from people who'd clearly done their research. I raised these children alone, I continued. I didn't ask for a single penny from the Sterling family. They didn't want us. They called me a liar and a gold digger. And you know what? I proved them wrong. Clarissa turned on Brandon, her voice shrill. You told me she was just some poor girl who tried to trap you. You said she made up the pregnancy. Brandon shook his head weakly. I thought she just left. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. You wanted the problem to disappear so you could marry Clarissa and secure your precious merger. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. And you gave up these two amazing human beings in the process. I felt Mia tug on my hand. Mommy, why is everyone staring? I knelt down to her level. Because they're seeing the truth for the first time, baby. And the truth is pretty powerful. An older gentleman pushed through the crowd, someone I didn't recognize. Distinguished, silver-haired, wearing an expression of severe disapproval. Raymond, he said coldly, I was considering investing $50 million in Sterling Industries. But I have to say, this gives me serious pause about the character of your leadership. Now wait just a minute, Raymond blustered. This is a private family matter. Private? The man laughed humorlessly. You've made it very public by inviting this woman here to humiliate her. It seems she's turned the tables rather effectively. Clarissa suddenly let out a shriek of frustration. This is insane. I can't believe this is happening. At my event. Your event? I raised an eyebrow. She turned on Brandon, mascara starting to run. I want a divorce. I want it now. And I want every single thing I'm entitled to. She stormed away, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. Raymond grabbed Brandon's arm. Do something. But Brandon wasn't looking at his father. He was looking at me. At the children. His children. Noelle, he said, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. I should have. God, I'm so sorry. It was the apology I'd waited 5 years to hear. And you know what? It meant nothing. Sorry doesn't undo what you did, I said quietly. Sorry doesn't give you back the first steps, the first words, the birthdays. You made your choice. Now live with it. I gathered my children close and turned to walk away. But before I left, I looked back one more time. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I came here so you would finally know the truth. What you do with it now is up to you. Then I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high, my children's hands in mine, and I never looked back. The aftermath was bigger than I'd anticipated. The story broke everywhere. Financial news gossip sites, social media, video clips from the gala went viral, millions of views within 24 hours. Sterling Industries stock dropped 18% in a single day. The board called an emergency meeting. Investors started pulling out. Clarissa filed for divorce within a week, citing irreconcilable differences. According to the tabloids, she was seeking half of everything, including the Manhattan penthouse and a beach house in the Hamptons I hadn't known existed. Raymond Sterling was hospitalized for chest pains. Not a heart attack, thankfully, but serious enough that he officially resigned as chairman of the board. And Brandon was left to pick up the pieces. He called me, multiple times. I didn't answer. Finally, he sent an email. Long, rambling, desperate. Noelle, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything from you. But please, I'm begging you, let me meet them. Let me know them. I know I failed as a husband. Let me try not to fail as a father. I read that email probably 50 times. I showed it to Harper, to my mother. We debated for hours. But then I thought about Mia and Ethan, about how they'd started asking questions lately. Mommy, why don't we have a daddy? Other kids have daddies. Where's ours? Did our daddy not want us? That last question broke my heart. Because how do you explain adult cruelty to a 4-year-old? How do you tell them that yes, their father chose money and status over them without damaging them forever? Maybe I thought maybe there was a way to give them something. Not for Brandon's sake, for theirs. I agreed to meet him. We chose a neutral location, a coffee shop far from the city. I came alone. No kids, no backup. Just me and my ex-husband, and 5 years of unresolved history. Brandon looked different. Thinner. Tired. The arrogance that had once defined him seemed to have deflated. Thank you for coming, he said when I sat down. Thank you for giving me this chance. This isn't about you, I said. It's about Mia and Ethan. They deserve to know their father, but that doesn't mean you deserve to know them. He winced. Fair enough. He told me everything. How the merger with Whitmore Capital had never felt right. How his father had pressured him, manipulated him, convinced him that the Sterling name was more important than anything else. How he'd spent 5 years trying to fill the hole in his life with work and status, only to realize he'd thrown away the only real thing he'd ever had. I listened without commenting. When he finished, I took a slow sip of my coffee. You're not wrong about most of that, I said. Your father was toxic. Your marriage to Clarissa was clearly a disaster. But Brandon, you made choices. You could have stood up to Raymond. You could have fought for me. You could have believed me when I told you about the pregnancy. You didn't. That's on you. I know. His voice cracked. I know it is. We sat in silence for a while. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. You want to be part of the twins' lives. You're going to earn it. Supervised visits starting small. You're going to show up consistently. You're going to put them first. You're going to go to therapy and deal with all the issues that made you who you were. I will, he said quickly. I'll do all of it. I'm not finished. I held up a hand. If you miss visits, if you prioritize work over them, if you hurt them in any way, you're out. No second chances. I've given you more grace than you deserve. Don't make me regret it. He nodded, tears in his eyes. Thank you, Noelle. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't done anything. I stood up. Actions, Brandon. Not words. Actions. 6 months later, things were different. Brandon had stepped down as CEO of Sterling Industries. Voluntarily, to everyone's shock. He took a lesser role in the company, something that allowed him to have a life outside of work for the first time. He came to Ohio every other weekend. At first, the visits were awkward. The twins didn't know what to make of this man who suddenly wanted to be part of their lives. But Brandon was patient. He didn't push. He let them set the pace. He played with them, read them stories, sat on the floor building block towers that Ethan would gleefully knock down. He attended Mia's preschool recital and cried when she sang her little song. He was trying, really trying. I watched it all from a careful distance. My mother was skeptical but supportive. Harper said I was too forgiving but understood why I was doing it. As for me, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not love for Brandon, that ship had sailed long ago, but a kind of peace, a release of anger I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Bloom Naturals went public that spring. The IPO was a massive success. Harper and I stood together on the floor of the stock exchange, ringing the opening bell, surrounded by our team. I thought about how far I'd come. From that tiny motel room, with nothing but heartbreak and 2 babies growing inside me, to this moment, co-founder of a company valued at over $100 million. I thought about my father, how proud he would have been. About my mother waiting at home with the twins, probably making her famous chocolate chip cookies for our celebration dinner. I thought about Brandon, who was learning slowly how to be a father. Whether he'd succeed in the long run, I didn't know. But at least he was trying, which was more than I'd ever expected. That night I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, a glass of wine in my hand. The twins were already in bed. The house was quiet. My phone buzzed. A message from Nathan, a man I'd been dating for a few months. An architect. Kind funny, nothing like Brandon. Saw the news about the IPO. You're incredible. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate? I smiled and typed back. Definitely. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was good. It was mine. And that was more than enough. I think back sometimes to that invitation, the one that started it all. Brandon's smug little note inviting me to witness his success, expecting me to show up defeated and humiliated. He couldn't have been more wrong. I showed up triumphant. I showed up with 2 beautiful children who proved everything he'd denied. I showed up as a successful entrepreneur who'd built an empire from nothing. I showed up and I shattered his world. Not out of revenge, but out of truth. And there's nothing more powerful than that. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel small, ever been told you weren't enough, ever been abandoned by someone who should have loved you, I want you to know something. Your worth isn't determined by anyone else. Not your partner, not your family, not the people who doubt you. Your worth is determined by you, by what you build, by how you rise, by the choice to keep going when everything says you should give up. The people who leave you during your worst moments don't get automatic tickets to your best ones. But sometimes people can change. The question is whether they're willing to put in the work and whether you're willing to let them try. That's a choice only you can make. For me, I chose to give Brandon a chance not because he deserved it, but because my children deserve to have the option of knowing their father. What he does with that chance is up to him. And no matter what happens, I know one thing for certain. I'll be just fine. I've proven that already. So if someone ever tries to humiliate you, if they invite you to witness their success thinking you'll shrink in their shadow, remember this story. Show up anyway. Show up stronger than they could ever imagine. Show up with your truth and let it speak for itself. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming someone they could never have predicted. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced someone who tried to make you feel small? How did you rise above it? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and help spread this message to others who might need it. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of strength and transformation. And if you know someone going through a tough time right now, share this video with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're capable of more than we realize. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. I'm wishing you strength when things are hard, courage when you're afraid, and the unshakable belief that you are enough exactly as you are. Until next time, Take care of yourselves and each other.